know that many student front desk staff workers or office support student staff aren't just responsible for scheduling appointments. We know that they often help with other processes in the office, and some of those can be managed through SSC as well. One of the most common functions in the site that you might be using is uploading documents to a student profile. There are two main ways in which to do this on SSC campus. The first is going to be using this quick search button up here. Similarly to when you enter the information on the appointment center, it's highly recommended that you use the 95 number rather than the name, as that's unique. In this particular case, I'm just going to use the name since I continue to be using our test student who doesn't have a 95 number. When you go to a student's page, you're going to see very limited information, primarily their calendar. As you can see, this student, thanks to them being my tester, has a number of advising appointments. Maybe they're just very engaged in their advising experience. That'd be great. You would see in the live site also courses for the student. If we use this for assignments or if they input assignments themselves, you'd see those things as well. The main functions you'll be using, however, would be potentially, if it's in your office protocol, to message or email the student from this page. If you click here, it'll open a message box and you can send that. You can add a note on a student, which we'll focus on in just a moment. You can add a reminder on a student. These reminders are not something that populates outside of SSC anywhere, so unless you're going to be using the system frequently to track reminders, it may not be the best place to put those for you. This create a request for an appointment is something that it will depend on the protocol within your office. And then, as we focused on earlier, the scheduling an appointment button is something that you can use as well. Most of the times you might be coming in, other than for scheduling an appointment, to add a note on a student. And when you do so, it's going to open up this note box. You'll have to include some type of information in the actual texting field. You can format it in some ways. It might just be as simple as needing to include the name of a document that you're going to attach. You can choose almost any format of file to attach. Most cases, we have folks attaching things like handwritten notes that they've scanned in, or 4-year plans, 2-year plans, a student homework assignment or advising assignment that they gave that they want attached to a student's information. These notes become part of a student's official student record, so it's important to know that anything you write or anything that you attach needs to be professional, objective, and something that it's appropriate for the student to potentially see. Because if a student were to request their student record, these information pieces would be part of that. So make sure you're not inputting your personal opinion. Make sure you're double checking that the information is accurate and appropriate. You can change the availability of notes. You could make a note available or visible only to yourself. In this particular case, as a student staff member, you don't actually have the ability to view student notes, so checking this box would not make sense. Even if this box was checked, if a student requested the notes or information, they would still receive this. If you check this box, it means that the student themselves would be able to see the information here. In this box, right now I'm using a test account that's called Academic Advising. You would see your name right here as the user, and the student's name here. The printed student report box is something that most offices won't have a need to use, as it primarily follows NCAA regulations. You can select a note reason. What's actually in the live site will look different than here in the test site, and if you have a URL you need to attach, you can do so as well. Once you input the information and double check it, you can save the note. If it becomes irrelevant, you can cancel or close out of the note, which is what I'm going to do now since I'm not going to make a note here. You can also see some very basic student information under these boxes where you can do things, including the student's email. If you go to this larger magnifying glass, you're going to be able to search for more than one student at a time, provided that you receive a list of the student's first and last names, or preferably a list of the student ID numbers. So if your supervisor or someone else in the office gives you a whole list of 95 numbers, you can copy and paste that. You don't have to include commas, just need spaces in between the 95 numbers. And you can then search for all of those folks and do something like add a batch note or make a group appointment. And I'll show you how to do that now. In this case, I'm going to search for prospective because I know that we have a couple prospective student accounts that aren't tied to any real student information. So you can see it's returned 2 results. And you can select both of those, one of those. It could return as many results as there are that go along with the information you've input. So there might be more than one page here. If there's more than one page, above this All button, there will be some blue text that says, I'd like to select, and it will say the number of additional entries. And if it is something you need to do for all those folks, you'll want to click that. From there, you can select the Actions drop-down menu that's right here, and you can send an email to as many of these folks as you need to. You can schedule an appointment for a group. You can make a note. You can export the results to Excel or show or hide columns. You can use this method to make individual notes, individual appointments, or send an individual message as well, if you prefer this to searching from the quick search and going into a student's page. So just really quickly, let's say we made the note here. As you can see, it has prospective student et al. And the 2 students listed here. So you'll know that you're making a note on whichever students are listed. This list can be quite long if it's a group note. This is most appropriate if you're recording something like event or workshop attendance or group advising or something of that sort, and everyone that's associated with the note got the same information. You wouldn't want to include anything that's specific to just one participant in this note. That would be reserved for making an individual note, as it becomes a part of every single student's student file once you save the note that's listed here. So, SSC can give you some great tools for scheduling with students, for working on drop-in, for looking at the appointments for the day, and it can allow you to put some processes online that previously might have lived in paper files. Hopefully, as you take some time to test things out in the test site, or the sandbox site as we sometimes call it, you'll come up with some questions or have some ideas and feel more comfortable getting onto the live site.